welcome into another edition of Chi Time, your conscious living show with me, Clara. And on this episode, I have for you a world-class, totally eminent author, facilitator, workshop leader. I mean, thousands of people flock to his progressive workshops and advanced workshops all around the world. I am talking about Dr. Joe Dispenza. Yeah, he has got so much going on with the way that he helps us sort of focus on our meditations. He has a whole range of meditations, really helping us to form our intentions very clearly, very concisely. And he just seems he's got so much love for life as well. He loves his music. He's always, I went to a progressive workshop. I went to this one actually a couple of weekends ago, and there was over 1,000 of us there. And it was incredible. I mean, he was talking information from the Placebo, probably a book you may well have known about, which I think should be in every single school and on every single bookshelf. But also his new book, Becoming Supernatural, is utterly key, and I've been very fortunate to be able to read this. Pretty much, nearly read all of it, but putting a lot of it into practice, and that is the key, as Dr. Joe would say, do the work. So, loads of questions or points of conversation that I'd like to have with him on behalf of you, okay, and also me. So let's get him on the line and see which ones that we can look at on this episode of Chi Time. So welcome to Chi Time, Dr. Joe Dispenza.
Hi, I'm happy to be with you, Clara.
Oh, it's just amazing. Honestly, I was up at your progressive workshop a couple of weekends ago now, and I want to just thank you so much for what you've helped me access within myself and all the other people there. I mean, you are doing sterling, important work. So, if I can be of assistance to getting more people to know about what you're doing, I'm really happy to do that for you. Fascinated about the now moment. And here we are in a now moment, and people watching this or listening are going to be in different now moments. I love the way that you play with all of that as well. And I think that your new book, Becoming Supernatural, talks about lots of things, but I'd like to start off with right now, in this now moment, what are you bringing in? What have you got coming through right now?
Well, my whole thing is service. My passion and my interest, of course, is to contribute to this evolution on this planet and hopefully get us waking up a little bit more about how powerful we really are. And I'm honored and privileged to have the opportunity to do that as much as I can. And actually, I never get tired of it.
No, talking to people about what you do and encouraging us, and what you do a lot of repetition, which I thank you for, and I really get this now, that the power of repetition is so important for us to rewire our brain, right?
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, repetition actually allows nerve cells to fire and wire together. If learning is making new synaptic connections, then remembering is maintaining and sustaining those connections. And some of the research shows that if you just take people and you have them concentrate on one topic for about an hour, study, that at the end of that hour, they'll double the number of connections in their brain just from their interaction with that information. But if they don't review it, if they don't repeat it, if they don't think about it, those circuits prune apart within hours or days. So if learning is making new synaptic connections, then remembering is maintaining and sustaining those connections. And for me, I just know that when I'm in an audience, I want to make learning fun. I want to make it fresh. I want to mix science with examples. I want to come at it as many ways as I can. But when people start to understand the concept, I think it's so important for them then to turn to the person next to them and explain it. Because if they can't explain that model of understanding, then it's not wired in their brain. But if they can explain it, they're beginning to install the neurological hardware in their brain in preparation for an experience. So then when they have the experience, when they apply that philosophy, that theory, that knowledge, and they get their behaviors to match their intentions, experience enriches those philosophical, theoretical circuits in the brain, and then all of a sudden the experience causes the brain to make a chemical, and that's called a feeling or an emotion. Now we're teaching our body chemically to understand what our mind has intellectually understood. So knowledge is for the mind and experience is for the body. And in that moment, the person's beginning to embody the truth of that philosophy. And so repetition then allows them to understand what they're doing and why. And if you understand the what and the why, the how gets easier, because you can assign meaning to what you're doing. And when you assign meaning to what you're doing, you have more intention behind what you're doing. So I like to do it so that nothing is left to conjecture, nothing is left to dogma, nothing is left to superstition. You understand what you're doing and why, and I think science is the language to do that.
Oh, absolutely. And you've got reams and reams of proof, really. I mean, you've had people plugged in during meditation. You were talking us through the different levels of brain waves. I'm fascinated, but that the beta brain wave is really fast, but so is the gamma one. But it's a different fast frequency, right? But we have to go through the slow ones to get to the super fast.
So I mean, it's a great question. I mean, you know, your brain's job is to create meaning and coherence between what's going on in your outer world and what's going on in your inner world. And because our senses plug us into the environment, everything you're seeing and hearing and smelling and feeling and tasting, all that information has to be integrated by the brain, and it takes awareness to do that. So the moment we become aware that we're a body in space and time, that we are connected to an environment, and we're aware, our brainwaves go into what's called beta brainwave frequency. And it's kind of a fast frequency. It's kind of when we're conscious. There's nothing wrong with beta. It's when we concentrate, it's when we learn. But when we get a little out of balance, we get a little stressed, or really stressed, brain goes into a very, very fast arousal state, what was called high beta. And high beta is even a faster frequency, and that's when you're fearful, or when you're anxious, or you're worried, or you're angry or aggressive or judgmental or resentful or impatient, or you're in pain or you're suffering or even depressed. The brain tends to idle at a very fast frequency, and that's good for the short term, like if you're being chased by a predator, but it's not good for the long term. And some people get stuck in those states. So then the whole purpose of meditation is to get beyond the analytical mind. And what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is the analytical mind. So it then requires people to begin to slow their brain waves down, and they move from those beta brain waves, or the high beta brain waves, and they begin to relax, and they close their eyes, and they're no longer perceiving as much sensory information because they're not seeing anything or hearing anything, and they're playing music in the background, and they're not getting up and they're not moving around, they're not eating or tasting or smelling. The less sensory information of the brain causes the brain to move into alpha. But we're looking for a very specific type of alpha, very coherent, very organized alpha. And it turns out when you take your attention off anything material and you go from a narrow focus to an open focus, and you sense nothing material, something immaterial, energy or frequency or nothing, the act of going to an open focus or a divergent focus begins to cause the brain to start to become more integrated. It becomes more holistic, it becomes more coherent. So then, if the body starts to fall asleep and the mind stays awake, now you're in theta, and that's kind of like a hypnotic state. This is when you're very suggestible to information. So our research shows that when people go into that slow state of low alpha or theta, their systems that cause repair and regeneration switch on, right? And then something quite unusual happens to a lot of our students. All of a sudden, the body gets super aroused, like they connect to this field of information, this frequency, and all of a sudden, the brain goes into gamma brainwave patterns, and now they're getting an arousal, but the arousal is not coming from some stressor in their outer world. The arousal is coming from the sympathetic nervous system, releasing energy back up into the brain. And so now, that kind of strong rush of energy causes us to become super aware, super conscious, and now we're paying attention more to what's going on in our inner world. And that's why things like super learning and profound moments and super conscious and aware moments are connected with gamma. And it turns out we can actually induce that state now, and we actually know even the words that can even stimulate it. So.
Oh. Wow, honestly, incredible stuff. So you're taking meditation to a whole new level, making it, scientific as well as hugely practical, you know. For people that are used to meditating and mindfulness and that kind of thing, Dr. Joe Dispenza, how would you say your way of meditating is like more enhanced, and what's it helping people?
Well, I don't really subscribe to any traditional meditation, like mindfulness or any Buddhist or Hindu or any specific types of meditation. And the reason being, although there's threads of commonality in some of it, I think I use just the scientific model, because I think that once you start talking about tradition or culture or religion, if you're addressing an audience, you will divide an audience. But I think that science creates community and it unifies people, and it is the language. So I use different types of meditation based on the research that we've done to not only to become conscious and present, which, you know, is important, and to become aware of your thoughts and notice them and not participate in them and, you know, overcome some emotional states. I understand that. But I also believe that we're creators, that once you get to this place of inner peace and present moment, now it's time to start directing energy. And the only way you direct energy is with consciousness, with your intent, with your mind. And so then energy follows your mind, or follows your thought, follows your intent. And that's when people start beginning to make measurable changes in their bodies or in their lives, in any direction they want to go. So we teach people how to then not only just become mindful, but also to begin to create the lives they want.
Yeah, and I really love how you've got that convergence kind of on the blessing the energy centers, for example. Wonderful meditation, very linked to the chakras, obviously, but, you know, coming into that single point awareness and then expanding it out to the field. I mean, to me, that's like the whole breath, you know, the in-breath and the out-breath, and that how you bring that into meditation. You have that singular focus and then you expand it. It feels completely like what you're meant to be doing in meditation. So, because the mind kind of wants to move, doesn't it? It struggles to be stuck in one place, and all that focus on one thing, it does not really work for me.
Well, you know, again, you know, we teach the blessing of the energy centers because each one of those energy centers are centers of information. They have their own frequency, they have their own energy, they carry their own message, their own intent, they have their own consciousness, their own glands, their own hormones, their own chemicals, and their own individual little brains. And so they're under the control of the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is the automatic nervous system that regulates hormones and digests food and makes enzymes and transports nutrients. I mean, this is that system that's giving us life. And so the only way you can actually connect to that operating system is by changing your brainwaves. And so in reality, the nature of reality is both particle and wave. It's both matter and energy. And so we've just been habituated into focusing on matter. That's just where most of our attention goes. So when people begin to rest their attention in these individual energy centers, and they're in that proper brainwave state, and then they can tune into the energy of each one, convergent and divergent focus, and if they can just tune into that frequency and stay present with it, that individual little brain will begin to become as coherent as our big brain when we open our focus and do the same thing. And so people begin to program their autonomic nervous system, and their bodies get more balanced and get more healthy, and they start repairing and regenerating, and their hormone levels go back to normal, and their imbalances begin to become more balanced. And it's a very simple process, but it's taken a little bit of time for students to finally understand what they're doing and why they're doing it that way. But yeah, it's the most popular meditation amongst our advanced community.
Yeah, well, I think the chakras are like a sort of a filing cabinet, aren't they, really? So when you attend to them all, they all support each other either side. But one of the other fascinating things, as we're talking about meditations, is the breath meditation. And, you know, I'm quite interested as a Qigong practitioner, right? So I'm used to directing energy. Oh my goodness, directing energy up your center line, whilst in an enhanced emotional state. So Dr. Joe, you on stage, you would be with the music, you would be encouraging us, come on, let's bring that energy up your center line, up, keeping the abdomen in and the perineum squeezed so that the chi is rising. Oh yeah, I'll talk about chi in a minute, but how did that come about? You know, why are we sending all the energy upwards where a lot of the, I'm getting into traditional question now, you would disperse unwanted stagnant chi down into the ground. So what's with that upwards?
Well, I mean, there's different breaths for different reasons, but the breath that we do is the breath, is we use the body as an instrument of consciousness to begin to draw energy from those lower centers back up into the brain. So imagine the majority of people's thoughts are connected to their first three centers in their body, and those centers have everything to do with survival. Sexuality, pain, suffering, victimization, guilt, shame, anger, control, self-importance, fear, aggression. And most people think certain thoughts that turn on certain circuits in their brain. They feel certain emotions. The moment they feel certain emotions, those emotions signal hormonal centers. And then the moment we feel a certain emotion, we think more corresponding thoughts equal to how we're feeling. And the repetition of that cycle conditions the body emotionally become the mind. So we're taking thought in the form of energy and storing it in the body. And now the body becomes the mind of that emotion. So if the majority of the person's body mind is in a program, and energy is stored in the body, and 5% is in the conscious mind, then there's got to be a way to pull the mind out of the body and to begin to liberate that energy. So all of a sudden, if the emotions are stored in the body and the body's in the past, then once this energy starts to move, we're freeing the body from the past. And as that energy starts to move, it begins to open different centers and creates more of a profound field for the person. So the way to do it, though, is not a passive breath.
No way. No, it's not at all.
Yeah, you have to find a level of intensity that's greater than that body-mind, and you have to demonstrate an active intent and presence and focus. And I can just tell you from experience, as well as the numerous brain scans we have, once that energy shakes loose, it's a moving freight train, and it creates way more energy in the brain, and not only just a little bit, but way more energy. And by the same means, the brain goes into a very, very highly organized state of coherence. Now the person is in that gamma state and super aware. And so we do that to free the body from the past.
So this is the right kind of energy. It's not the sort of the churning mind sort of energy. You can say, I'm always in my mind, got too much going on, but it's a different form of energy, isn't it? And for me, when that happens, the whole toroidal field gets completely activated. So yeah, the brain is getting fired up, but so is the energy field around. And that's
why we're doing it. We're doing that to actually create that torus field. And when you're living in stress and you're living in survival, or you're over consuming, you're over sexual, those centers are drawing from that invisible vital field around your body and turning it into chemistry. So in essence, the field around your body is diminishing, and you're becoming more matter and less energy, more particle and less wave. And now your body, instead of being like a magnet that has the same field, your body is just a piece of metal with no charge, and there's no field. So the act of starting to move energy between the polarity of the North Pole and the South Pole in the body begins to run a current up that central pole, and just like a magnet, you start producing that field, and the effects are pretty dramatic.
Oh, I'm getting excited just talking about it, because it's a natural phenomenon. It's going on anywhere, and we're kind of jump-starting it and reminding our systems that that's what it does naturally. And yeah, so talk about this for ages, but we haven't got loads of time here on chi time. You see, chi is the key, and I noticed you talk about the invisible field a lot, but you never mentioned the chi word. Why is that?
Well, again, the same way I never mentioned the word chakras or kundalini or mindfulness. I never use those words because I don't think it's appropriate to talk in the language that is dated from thousands of years ago. I think if you use life force, so you use energy, and you keep it simple and fresh, and not have people start to associate it with other things, then they keep their past out of it. So I like to keep it fresh. I like to keep it contemporary. I intentionally stay away from a lot of those words because it gets people hung up, and I don't think that that if a person is interested in just the practical application, the moment you start talking about those words, then some of those people may shut off because they may be a technical writer, an engineer, or an astrophysicist, and it just may not be appropriate. So if we just talk in terms of energy or life force, I think everybody's included, and that's my job, is to move a community of people from one state of mind and body to another. And so I have to make sure that it's not intimidating or people begin to shut off.
No, I hear you. Might have to change the name of my show. Oops. So I have a question about consciousness now, because you introduced the coherent field of the heart, and we talk about consciousness in the brain. I mean, where is consciousness? You know, we can't really pinpoint it anywhere. Where do we feel it? Where is our consciousness? Where do you think?
Well, you know, there's so much great research. Consciousness is not a byproduct of the brain. Consciousness is actually using the brain to produce different levels of mind. And there's just some great research that's going on right now by some really unlimited researchers that are showing that the field around the body and the brain is where consciousness exists. And it is that field that begins to manipulate different circuits in the brain to produce mind. So mind is the brain in action, but mind needs energy, and it needs consciousness to move through it. So if you think about this, if the brain can actually change itself, and it can, we can rewire the brain by learning or experiencing or changing our behaviors or making different choices. The fact that we can change the way we think, it means then we're not the brain. We're the operator of the brain, because who's doing the changing of the brain and the mind? The brain can't change the brain, it's just an organ. It's no different than the liver. The mind can't change the brain because the mind is the brain in action. So then who's doing the changing of the brain and the mind? And that's consciousness. That's that immaterial aspect of us. So then that consciousness has a field associated with it, because all energy or all frequency carries information. So then as we begin to tune into different energy and different frequency, we can change the level of mind that we're producing. So then research that's been done just at Harvard, the last 50 years, with rats that have a propensity for, say, something like uterine cancer, they find that there's an invisible field that they can detect before the cancer shows up, that there's a field where they can see the animals that have had the uterine cancer have a specific signature in their field. They can see the same signature in those rats, but they don't have the uterine cancer yet, but they do get it. So it starts in the field before it's in matter. So it's not matter that emits the field, it's the field that actually organizes matter. Change the field, change the energy, you change matter, and that's the work that we're doing.
Wow. Because what is it, the OR theory that suggests that consciousness is in the microtubules of the myelin sheath in the brain?
Well, I do think that consciousness is where it permeates. It's in and around us. So microtubules are little cytoskeletons. They're like if you took a cell, a big round cell, and you were to blow all the snot off it, you would be left with these little tubules. And those tubules are very, very sensitive to frequency. In fact, they vibrate. So as the person is experiencing greater levels of energy, they begin to vibrate a little bit more. So that's where consciousness lives, because you can't have energy without consciousness. So it's in you and it's all around you. And interestingly enough, when we measured DNA expression, changes of DNA in 4 days in one of our advanced workshops, one of the genes that was actually activated was the gene for the construction and the stability of the cytoskeletons, the microtubules, which means that our students are changing their frequency, and the cells are beginning to repair and produce stronger cytoskeletal structures.
Wow. I love to play on words between frequency and repetition. I think we could go down that route, but let's not do that now, because we're nearly at the end of this interview, and I would love to talk to you about gratitude and it being the ultimate state of receivership, because all this sort of manifesting that we do in the field, and when, the law of attraction way back, when you say thank you for something, like it's already happened, and you so definitely explain why the energy of gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. I love it, Dr. Joe, it's great. So yeah, that way of working with that, no matter what, we've all got the miracle of life. We can all be thankful for something, even when it's really tough out there, and it is really tough out there for a lot of people. To come into, what would you suggest for
Well,
somebody?
look, I mean, we've just been hypnotized and conditioned into believing we needed reason to be grateful or to be thankful or appreciative. That's waiting for something outside of us to change how we feel inside of us. And when someone gives us something and we feel better, and it takes away our pain or our emptiness or our lack, we pay attention to who caused it. But in essence, the structure, the fundamental structure of that is really waiting for your outer world to change your inner world. But the majority of the time, when your outer world is throwing fastballs at you or throwing darts at you, then the majority of the time we're reacting in the opposite way. We're feeling anger or frustration or fear or sadness or deflation. So then why not teach a person how to regulate internal states independent of their conditions in their external environment? Trade fear for gratitude, trade anger for appreciation, and train them on how to do that so that they know when they're there and when they're not. So our research shows that just 10 minutes of gratitude a few times a day is going to strengthen your immune system by 50% and begin to make this very chemical called immunoglobulin A, the primary defense against bacteria and viruses. That system shuts down when you feel the stress hormones like anger, fear, and pain. So then trade that, and all of a sudden, if you're feeling thankful, you're now, without anything outside of you, your body as the unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between an experience that creates an emotion and an emotion that you're creating by thought alone. The body's believing it's already receiving what you're intending, and you will only accept, believe, and surrender to thoughts that are equal to your emotional state. So you won't accept, believe, and surrender to any thoughts that not. You could say, I'm wealthy, I'm wealthy, I'm wealthy, I'm healthy, I'm healthy, I'm healthy. And if you're feeling fear or lack or pain, that thought's not making it to your body. Change the state of gratitude, and all of a sudden now the person will accept, believe, and surrender to the thoughts equal to that emotional state, and they begin to program their autonomic nervous system into a different destiny, and that's how people start to change.
So all this positive thinking is not enough. Got to go deeper.
Positive thinking, you can think positively all you want, but if you're feeling negatively, that thought's not going to make its way to the body. Change the emotional state, and all of a sudden the body will accept the thought. That's why affirmations don't work.
Oh, Dr. Joe Dispenza here on Chi Time. That's quite a statement. But there's another statement of yours which says, in this age of information, ignorance is a choice, which I think is absolutely spot on as well. So in this age of information where ignorance is a choice, and it looks like we've got numerous challenges, well, it's true, we do have numerous challenges coming at us. What do you say to people out there to give them hope and be able to...
Gosh, we chose to be here. I mean, this is a great time to be alive. Every paradigm, every system, whether it's the environment, the political model, the economic model, the religious model, the educational model, the medical model, everything is collapsing for a reason, because it cannot sustain itself in a new consciousness. And we have to face these times, not in fear, not in rage, not in resentment, not in prejudice, not in control, but we have to face these times with being the example of everything we want to see, how we want to see the world to change. So that means then, as you're working on changing yourself and I'm working on changing myself, and I think we start making a better world. And we should never, ever make it about a person. It's just, when we do it, we give our power away to that person because we're giving them our attention. We should make it about principles. Once you make it about principles and no longer about people, people will unite for principles because they want freedom, they want happiness, they want peace, they want love, they want connection. That's our innate normal state when we're not living in survival. And so much of our world reminds us to live in survival because that's what people keep their attention. So I think it's so important for us really to be the living example of everything we want to see changed in the world.
Yeah, it's like the Gandhi quote, isn't it? Be the change, but it's so very true. And as we shift our frequency and our energy so that ripples out, there's an infectiousness to it. Wasn't it Darwin that said something about kind societies were the ones that were going to survive, because kindness is a natural human trait and it is infectious. When people are kind, it makes other people want to be kind.
And it actually is good for you too. You actually start releasing oxytocin, and oxytocin signals nitric oxide, and nitric oxide causes your heart to swell. When your heart swells, you have more energy there. You start leading with your heart. You start making decisions with your heart. And all of a sudden, you start trusting a lot more. So So I think our research also shows that when you get a group of people together and you have them open their hearts and feel those emotions, that it affects other people at a non-local place. Other people are affected when you start feeling those elevated states that are on the other side of the room. So I mean, again, that's creating a resonant field, a frequency that people can tune into and at least to be affected by autonomically.
Yeah, and when you have that experience that is real for you, you can trust that. I think trust is a very key word. Who do we trust in this day and age? Where can we find the right information that we need to be able to make the decisions that we have to make? And, you know, trusting yourself as well as who can we trust, I think is a big question.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, Dr. Joe, you're a very busy man. I believe you're off. Where are you off to next? What are you up
Wow.
to?
So I just got back from Santa Cruz, California. I have a day, and tomorrow I leave for Barcelona. We're doing an event for about 1,500 people in Barcelona. Then I go to Croatia to do an evening talk, and then from there I go to Rome to do a keynote presentation, and then we have another a progressive workshop in Rosenheim, Germany, 1,500 people, and then I'll go to Kiev, to the Ukraine, and do a talk in the Ukraine before I come back home for a few days.
Is this all before Christmas?
Oh yeah, no, then I'll come home and then I'll go again, and then I'll go to North Carolina, then I'll go to Austin, and then I'll go to Costa Rica for a couple of weeks and do a couple of retreats in Costa Rica. Then I'll be home for Christmas.
Wow, you are so busy. How can people find out more about you and where they can catch up with you around the world?
Well, probably the easiest place to catch up with me is just through my website. It's just drjoedispenza.com. And a lot of information there. I just released a new book called Becoming Supernatural, How Common People Are Doing the Uncommon. And it's got a lot of the research that we've been doing and a lot of good stories to help people understand that it's possible for them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And your project coherence as well is big. The way that, just before we go, you were talking about how it's great for people to connect together and do these online meditations and stuff. But what you're saying is that we need to sustain that through our whole lives. So
yeah, I mean, peace projects show that the violence and crime and car accidents go down when people are meditating on it. But when they stop, those effects return back to their ceiling level. So it's not just enough to think it. We have to demonstrate peace in every area, so then it becomes even more infectious. And when you get enough people doing that, you only need a certain percentage before you start seeing big changes.
Yeah, brilliant. Oh, thank you so much for being part of Chi Time, Dr. Joe Dispenza. One thing, could you introduce the track that you've chosen to play to listeners at the end of the show? Now, at all his events, when we come back off breaks, the whole place turns into a disco for about 2 tracks, which I think is brilliant. It gets everybody up and dancing. And I asked you for one particular track that you're really loving at the moment, so that you are choosing this for people. What is it and why?
The song?
Yes.
Did they send it to you?
I have it. Yeah, I do have it.
Well, let's see. There's 2. There's one called Havana that I just really love because it just is so suave, and it causes something inside of us to begin to stir. And I think that kind of energy starts moving our bodies a little bit more, and it makes us feel more alive. And it's a very, very passionate song, and I think that it wakes us up. So I love that song, Havana.
Yeah, oh, it is absolutely great. You said you've got another one. I haven't heard of the second one. Which is the second one?
Oh, there's a song called 24 Karat where they talk about magic in the air, and Bruno Mars sings it, and we play that a lot at our events, and people just really resonate with it. It's got a great sound and a great beat to it, and well, you probably danced to it if you were in London.
I probably did, didn't I? And I'm going to see you again next July, because I believe you're coming back to the UK then for an advanced workshop, which we're hopefully going to get to you somewhere on the beach. So we can do
Yes, we're working pretty hard on finding the right location, but it'll be a week-long event, and it'll be outstanding.
Yeah, so much to talk about. Well, when you do that, would you come back into interview and we can continue this conversation? It would be lovely.
Absolutely. Invite me before I come, a month before I come, and we'll talk about what we'll be doing at the workshop and get people fired up.
That'd be great. Thank you so much. Have fun on all your journeys and look after yourself too. The world needs you, Dr. Joe.